There are people who are meant to go all the way with you, but there are those who are just there to serve you or for you to serve them temporarily, and that's okay. I am so happy that I did not go and get my boobs done. I wish I knew that grief was just love with no place to go, and days when I could have allowed myself to feel. I felt like I was failing her because I wasn't the perfect mother.
Teach her how to jump and how to stretch when she reach, like the angels do, and you gon' make it through now. Tell about the healer, greater is the one within, and call him as the leader.
It's another year around the sun, and while everything in my life is far from perfect, I know one thing for sure is there is at least one thing in my life right now that's exactly how it should be. And for that, I'm grateful. Whether it's the peace that I now have, whether it's the fact that I choose myself daily, unapologetically, whether it's the fact that my space is filled with so much joy and so much laughter, or just that quiet strength that I have in me, whatever it is, something's right and I'm grateful. Sometimes it only takes that one thing to remind you that you're aligned, that you're growing, that you're blooming. And sometimes that one thing is enough. So, happy birthday to me. In this special edition, I want to share with you things that I wish I knew when I was in my 20s. Love isn't meant to shrink you. It isn't meant to hurt you. It isn't meant to confuse you. I wish I knew that a real relationship, real love, brings clarity and never chaos. I can think of relationships that I've been in my 20s that were just filled with so much turmoil, whether it was emotional turmoil, mental turmoil, whether it is that I had to shrink myself down to fit in a particular box, whether it was that I had to deny parts of myself to feel loved and accepted by that person, whether it meant that I needed to show up in some ways and not in the others to feel safety in the relationship. I wish I knew then what it meant to really be loved, to really be in what I would consider a safe relationship. Everyone isn't meant to grow with you. I wish I knew that there are people who come into your life for a reason, for a season, and I wish I also knew that that was okay. I've lost friends and relationships, and they affected me so deeply. And I couldn't understand, like, I thought that these bonds that I was building were lifetime bonds. And so it was hard for me to understand that they were actually coming to an end, or even worse, when they did come to an end. So learning that people in your life can sometimes be seasonal. There are people who are meant to go all the way with you, but there are those who are just there to serve you or for you to serve them temporarily, and that's okay. I thought that growth would be empowering. I didn't know that growth is sometimes very lonely. Sometimes growth will isolate you. Sometimes growth will have you in silence. It will have you going really slow. However, I learned that it's still worth it, regardless of what that journey looks like, regardless of how intimidating growth might be, because let's be real, sometimes growing can be intimidating to even you. Because I have found myself growing through some seasons, growing through processes, and it scared me. So I wish I knew that it wasn't this big empowering thing. Oh, I grow and I feel so much better now and I'm a better woman, and it's not like that. But it's still worth it though. I wish I knew in my 20s that fitness wasn't about punishing your body, but it was about moving and going with the natural flow of things. And I also wish I knew how important it was to treat myself like someone that I love, because I can think of times when I didn't exactly treat my body like the best. We did not have the best relationship. And so I wish I knew that. I mean, now I am on it. Now I'm trying to make up for lost time. But then I realized that starting earlier to have a good relationship, a good connection with your body works out best for you in the long run. This makes me so emotional, but I wish I knew how important it was to come home to your body. Like, I think we underestimate the importance of having a good relationship with your body, a good positive relationship. In my early 20s, I was so sure that I was gonna have breast implants. I was so certain that I was gonna have them done, because in my mind at the time, I felt like there was a beauty standard at the time that I did not meet. I felt like, okay, I have a nice face, I have a nice smile, I have a nice this, I have a nice that, nice fingers, nice toe, I have a nice figure, but I am lacking this. And I am so happy that I did not go and get my boobs done. I am so grateful. Whatever it was that kept me from doing it, I am so grateful, because when I started to develop that relationship with myself, when I started to return to my body, I started to appreciate the things that I didn't exactly like. It took developing a good relationship with myself. It took returning to my body where I could appreciate her, where I could understand that my body is who I am. Because sometimes we're so focused on the spiritual, and yes, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, but the reality is, without your body, there's just a spirit. Like, where would you live? The body is the only place you have to live. And so once you start realizing that your body is you, when you start realizing that you might not have big boobs, but it's you. You might not have the flattest stomach. If you can't do anything about it, this is you. You might not have the smallest feet or the smallest nose or whatever it is that you see, but regardless of what it is, when you start to realize that this is me, I learned to appreciate not having big boobs. Once you start to develop that relationship and you start to look at yourself, one of the things that I started to do was I started to look at myself naked. So I would take all my clothes off before I showered or after I got out of the shower, and I would just admire my naked body. So the things that I saw that I didn't like, eventually I started to make peace with them until I started to love them. One of the things I can share with you is I had surgery on my stomach, and for the longest while I hated the fact that it left scars. And I would do anything in my power to not show those scars, until one day I was looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, those scars are my reminder that I survived what could have killed me. And then all of a sudden I was wearing crop tops. I did not care anymore. So that is one thing I wish someone had told me in my 20s, that it is so important to return to your body and to develop a really good relationship with her. Make your body your friend. It's not weakness to admit that you need help. I had to get therapy. I started journaling, and I started establishing boundaries that changed everything for me. There was a point where I felt like I could not show weakness. I was showing up for everyone, but I felt like if I showed myself to be vulnerable, then it meant that I was weak, and it meant that I was of no use to the people around me anymore. I had to unlearn that. And so now I know when I need to say, hey, I cannot do that. This is too much for me. I know when I need to step back from a space. I know when to shut down conversations and not feel guilty for it. I know when to put myself first and not feel like a horrible person for daring to choose myself. And so, yeah, I really wish I knew that in my 20s, how important that was for my mental health. Whew. I wish I knew that grief, this makes me so emotional. And this makes me emotional because for the longest time, I refused to allow myself to grieve, whether it be losing someone to death, whether it be losing someone to just the end of a relationship. I would not allow myself to grieve anything. I would always put that for another time. It never seemed like it was the right time to grieve. It always felt like I have this to do. I have so much more important things to do. I need to be a mom. I need to get this going. I need to figure this out. So I never really took the time to grieve. I never truly connected with the fact that grieving just made me human. I'm one of those people who I gave myself a timeline for everything. I felt like, hey, you have this amount of time to go through this, to process this and keep it moving. You cannot stay here. I felt like I was wasting my time, like I was wasting my life to stop and grieve things, to grieve the end of things. And so I wish I knew how important that was, because I feel like there are so many things that I could have gotten through so much faster. There are so many things that would not have piled up for me to be fighting an entire mountain of emotions had I just grieved. I learned over time that when I don't express my emotions, when I don't get them out, when I don't feel them, they find somewhere to go. So if you don't let them out, they're in there somewhere. And that just brought to me the thought that we see all these memes that say, oh, when you're in your 30s and your back hurts and your knee hurts. A lot of times the pain that you're feeling in your 30s it could be because you're inactive or illness, but it could be because you have emotions in you that you need to let out. And we're taught to hold it together, not break. You can't let them see you slip. We are in a culture that tells us that in order to be strong, you can never let them see you cry. You have to pretend you are okay, because if they see you vulnerable, if they see you broken, then they think you're weak. And so a lot of this back pain that we're having, neck pain, random pains, that is unresolved emotions, unexpressed emotions that have not left your body. Because think about it. If you have grief inside, if you have anger, if you have sadness, if you have hurt, and you don't express them, you don't cry, you don't talk about them, you don't get them out of you, they don't go away on their own. They stay there and they gather over the years or over the months, and next thing you know, you have a whole mental break. That's where you have the panic attacks and all that, because if you were allowing yourself to process these things little by little by little, day by day, we would not get to the point where we break. And I've had a couple of those points in my life where I just could not do it anymore because everything was just caving in on me. It felt so heavy. And then at that point, that's when you're forced to handle it. That's when you have no choice. That's when you end up in the hospital. That's where you end up on medication, because now the body can only hold that much unexpressed emotion and no more. So eventually it starts to make you sick. You end up with all sorts of ailments and you're like, oh, well, I was good a year ago. Yeah, but there's something that you needed to get out of you. So I wish I knew that early out, that it is okay. It is okay to cry. It's a human response. And it's funny because I cry at the simple things, but I feel like when things get hard, I don't cry. I am a person who laughs at everything. And I realize that this is the way how I cope. So what I've been doing is I still laugh. It's like a natural response. But I have been like stopping myself in my tracks. Like I laugh and then afterwards at night or whatever, I'm like, okay, Shanice, but how does this make you feel? What emotions does this trigger in you? I am learning in my 30s to give language to how I feel, to figure out how I'm going to get this out of me. So yeah, healing wouldn't make me perfect. There's this idea of healing that I think even now a lot of people misunderstand. There's this thought that if you go on a healing journey, when you're done healing, the pain will go away. You will suddenly feel like, oh, happy day, brand new day. I forgot all of the trauma. I forgot all the hurt. That's not what it is. The idea of healing isn't so you no longer feel the things. I also had to learn that healing wounds cannot be forever. If you are healing wounds Wounds eventually heal. I was saying this to my best friend, and she gave me this analogy, which I think is beautiful. I'm going to borrow it. She said to me that her son, when he bruises his knee, he'll put a band-aid on it. And in his mind, this wound is so bad, it's so painful, it's never going to heal. And so even after this bruise has dried up, it probably doesn't even hurt, but he thinks that this pain is going to be forever. So chances are 2 days after, when he had already healed, he's still limping around because the expectation is that this is going to last forever. I wish I knew in my 20s how important it was to know when you have already healed. Because I just felt like, okay, healing is a continuous thing. What I learned, however, is that healing is continuous, but it's not the same things that you're healing from. So if you're healing from childhood trauma, you might be healing from not getting enough affection, and then you heal and then you move on to addressing something else, but you cannot be healing forever from the same thing. The world's standards of beauty are exhausting, and they change. Because think back to how many times we've seen the beauty standard, just everyone gets to it and then they just move it again. It's something that you can never truly get to, because 1 minute skinny was in. If you weren't skinny with blonde hair and whatever, then it wasn't it. And then it was skinny with big boobs. And then it was the curvier, the better. Thick girls winning. And then we're now in the age of the BBL. So I wish I knew in my 20s, when I started to question myself whether I was enough, when I started to look in the mirror and identify things that were on me that wasn't the standard, or things that were in the standard that I didn't have. I wish I knew that, listen, baby, this is unattainable. Okay, this is gonna change in like 7 days. Give it time, it will change. I wish I knew then that I was enough the way that I am, the way that God made me, and that me was perfectly imperfect. Whew. I wish I knew in my 20s that my past isn't shameful. I wish I knew then that sharing my story, sharing my journey could actually set other people free and make them want to share theirs and make them want to heal also. There were parts of me that I held on to for years because I felt like if people saw this side of me, if people saw what I went through, if people saw that I had to work through that, then there was a shame that I carried. And I wish I knew then what I know now, that people were literally depending on my transparency, on my openness, on my story to start their process. I know that now, but I just can't help but think of how many more lives I could have impacted positively had I realized that back then. I used to think that motherhood required perfection. Now I know that what it requires is love, it requires patience, it requires my presence, it requires grace, and just the willingness to learn, the willingness to improve, the willingness to show up how my child needs me. I had this really heavy burden on my back when my daughter was really young because I felt like I owed it to her to be perfect. And on days when I felt broken and days when I could have allowed myself to feel, I felt like I was failing her because I wasn't the perfect mother. I felt like if I was broken, then I was doing something wrong. I was doing her some form of injustice. And so in her early years, I would almost punish myself because I felt like I cannot be out here living my life. I cannot be out here making decisions for myself, because if I did that, then it meant I wasn't doing what was right by her. And so with time, I learned what motherhood really is, because the truth of the matter is no one gives you a manual. You're never going to get every single part of it right. But then eventually she's 15 this year, and I realize how important it is for her to have my love, my grace, to know that I support her, to know that I am constantly evolving. And as I go through different transitions, then I see myself showing up differently as a mother, and it's actually really beautiful. I wish I knew how personal God really is. When I was younger, I felt like where I was or the life that I was living, I felt like God wouldn't want to have anything to do with me. I stayed away from the church because I felt like I wasn't living a life that was worthy of His love, of His grace, of having an encounter with Him. And so this year, 2025 November, will make it 6 years since I recommitted. But even when I got rebaptized and I went back to church, I still never understood how personal God really gets with you. When you spend time in His presence and when you show up to meet with Him, I learned that God will meet you in your mess. Not just on the mountaintops, not just when you're doing most things right. He will meet you where you are. Man, I wish I knew that. I don't have to file everything in sin or not sin. There are things that are not a sin, but just aren't good for me. So it's amazing. Sometimes I'm guilty of doing that. I'm like, well, it's not a sin. There's nowhere in the Bible that says that. But then is it good for you? I wish I knew that there was that middle ground where it's not just a matter of sin or not sin. It's not just a matter of pleasing God or not pleasing God. Is this good for you? So the way how we would explain things like, okay, if I wear this, there's nowhere in the Bible that says I cannot wear that, but is it good for you? Like I started to change my wardrobe. I started to dress differently. I started to present myself differently. And for some, they might be like, well, there's nothing wrong with what you had on. True. There's nothing in the Bible that says it, but is it good for me? Does it make me feel good to still be outside half naked? Does it make me feel good to do these things that make me feel some type of way? People will say, oh, music is music and da da da. Does it make me feel good if I listen to secular music? What's my state of mind when I'm listening to this? How are my emotions when I'm listening to this? And so I wish I knew that there was that middle ground. There was sin, not sin, and simply what's good for me. I wish I knew that my purpose would be found in the simple things, the faithful steps, the obedience, the surrender, the quiet yes, the healing, the becoming. I wish I knew in my 20s that that's really what purpose looks like. Man, I kept waiting for that one big writing on the wall. This is what you were called to do. And I mean, it wouldn't hurt if I went to a couple of church services and some anointed men and women of God would repeat exactly what was written on the wall. That's what I was hoping for. Like, people could just look at me and say, this is your purpose. It would be big. It would be bold. It would probably have big impact. Man, if I knew then what I know now, I would have been walking in my purpose for a while. But I recently figured that out. So I hope this helps you figure that out too. I hope this helps you to think about like what purpose really looks like. Drop a comment down below. Wish me a happy birthday. Maybe by the time you see this, it's way past my birthday, but you know what? It's okay. It's never too late. I appreciate you so very much. Like, there's so many new things coming to my channel. I am having to rebuild my channel actually. I'll do a video another time and share more about that and what's happening, because YouTube is wild, okay? It is wild. It's a lovely space because I get to connect, but it is wild and I am learning. And so as I learn, you will see more changes. For now, I am just in a frame of mind of gratitude. I'm just here. I'm just enjoying. I am 34 years old today. Isn't that something? Aging like fine, why? Thank you so very much for tuning in to yet another video. Share this with someone who's probably in their 20s that you would like for them to know these things before they get there, or someone in their 30s that they haven't learned these things yet. And if this was for you, comment down below. Let me know, hey, happy birthday. This video was for me. I send you love and nothing but positive vibes, because if you're here, then I trust that you're a person who is filled with positivity and good vibes. And so I appreciate you. I love you so very much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Teach her how to hold a pretty hand up to the sky.